Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial quarterback. Whether you've had years of success in your business or are just starting out, DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family and guide you toward the fulfillment of that goal. As they say, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your virtual family office. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. Today we're going to be talking about how to start the new year right. Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm just great, and Happy New Year to you, Eric.
Happy New Year to you, brother. I'm so glad to be back with you. We spent some time talking about our holidays and things before the podcast started, and I could just share this with the audience. We both had great holidays, and I hope you did too. I know Matt's hope for you is that you had a wonderful holiday season, and we're going to kick things off this year with some pretty important information today, right, Matt?
Well, that's exactly right. And I think everybody is glad to be done with 2020, and hopefully everybody's looking forward to 2021. So let's start the new year right. And one of the thing I wanted to talk about today, and we talked a little bit about this on my last podcast about, how during the new year, when the new year kind of basically comes in, we look at evaluate our lives, and we make resolutions and different changes that we want to make. And so January, we start out great. We're going to eat better. We're going to drink less alcohol. We're going to start a fitness routine. We're going to get our finances in order. We do all of those things. And then all of a sudden, what happens in February, Eric?
Yeah. We reality hits, and we're sitting on the couch with a bag of cookies and watching way more TV than we should. That's just my life.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's for most people. And it's interesting when I'm putting a plan together for clients. In many ways, it's like putting pieces of the puzzle together. Mm-hmm. And so, really, that part of it's pretty simple. But the question I'll ask them a lot of times is, how would you feel if you could grow your business 25 to 50% in this next year? And what do you think all of them say?
I'd love that, Matt.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the next question I ask them is, okay, how many of you have a plan to increase your business by that much? And what's interesting, what do you think the answer to that is?
Yeah, I really don't have a clue how to do that, Matt. That's my answer. I'm like, oh, geez. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge gain.
That's exactly right. But again, most people, while that's our intent and we want to see these great results, we don't do it because it seems unrealistic to us in our own minds, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what is to say that we could achieve that if we truly believe that? There was a book that came out years ago, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Mm-hmm. And the key lesson in that book is what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. And so if we can create a belief system in our own head to accomplish those goals, do you think that it might be easier for us to hit those goals?
Yeah, I mean, if I can believe in something, I've said for years, I'm not a salesperson. I don't do sales. However, I don't know how many times I've convinced somebody of something just because I believe in it so much, whether it's, a restaurant that we have to try together or, a certain tactic when it comes to marketing. I'm not selling them anything. I'm just telling them my experience, what I found, how I feel about it. And 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to try it just because of the conversation we had. Not that I'm that's expert and so amazing at it. It really is the passion behind the fact that I believe in something so much. That's what comes through, and that's what sells it. And I think I could probably do that to myself if I believed in something so much that I could believe myself. Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. And what that takes is a lot of times we have to rewire how we think. And so, and I'm going to say a little disclaimer. The subject I'm going to cover today, when I'm working with my clients, this takes many hours and sometimes multiple sessions to do. This is going to be very much a top-line view of our own, as my coach calls, our own operating system, or MyOS.
Okay.
And how what works between, the 6 inches between our ears. So, I think the key thing that we've got to understand is that our mindset determines how we feel and how we act, and our business becomes a reflection of what we think. I mean, when I was going through business planning this last month, and we spend a good 2 to 3 hour session just on mindset. And that's the one thing my coach always talks about. Your business is a reflection of your mindset. And the problem is that many of us have these hangups in our minds. We call it head trash that holds us back from achieving the things that we want to achieve.
Yeah. Matt, I want to jump in real quick because like you said, this is something that you work with your clients on. You do this, and it takes quite a few hours when you go through this thoroughly. So I'm going to challenge the audience. This is going to be a 25 to 30-minute podcast. There's not going to be time to cover everything. So as you're listening, if there's something that you have a question about or you want more information about, write it down. Take a note, jot something down, email Matt because he's more than happy to answer those questions. And if you ask, depending on what questions you're asking, we're going to cover those in future podcasts. And I know that Matt would be more than happy to dive deeper into these things. But we got to know that you're out there, you're listening, and that you want more information so we can get it to you.
Right. Exactly. The real purpose of this topic, at least in my mind, is that I want to start planting seeds with people to start getting them understanding why are we not achieving the results that maybe we really want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really where our mindset comes in. And again, how our mind operates. So there's basically 4 areas of our mindset. And the first one is what's called our beliefs. Beliefs are basically what we see as truths in our lives, and they could be both positive and negative. Mm-hmm. Those are, I think a lot of times that's where people's first real kind of hang up is. The question that I pose to my clients, which is the same questions that my coach poses to me, if we really just sit down and be honest with ourselves and answer the question, I am what? Life is what? People are what? Business is what? So for example, I may say, well, I am caring. I am loving. I'm real. I'm authentic. I'm wounded. Mm-hmm. I'm loyal. Maybe I'm needy. And again, we kind of look at these different belief systems that we have about ourselves. We would do the same thing with life. Life is easy or life is hard. Mm-hmm. Life is uncertain or life is a journey. Life is about growing. So, we have all of these different belief systems. Again, people are a joy. People are a blessing. People are a gift from God. People are trouble. People cause me grief. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Business is easy. Business is hard. Business is abundant. Business is scarce. We have all of these different beliefs in there. And as we sit down and start to answer these questions, and what I recommend is take a sheet of paper and just write each one of those, I am, and then answer that question and be completely honest with yourself and start listing all of the things that how you would answer that question. Life is.
Let me ask you this real quick. Like I am, when it comes to my personal life, there's a lot of answers that fill in that blank, but also when it comes to business, I've got some things that would fill in there too. Like I am, maybe I'm going to be filling in, I am scared, right? I'm scared to do this new part of a venture or to grow a certain area of my business because it's going to take more resources, more finance, and I don't know the outcome. It's fascinating to me that small little question, I am, can be filled in so many different ways from so many different aspects of your life as well.
Exactly. It was kind of like what you said earlier about, why don't people, have a plan to build their business 25 to 50% this year to grow it that much. And a lot of it's because they don't know how, but a lot of it is also that just what you said, they're scared, that there's uncertainty that's there. Yeah. And so again, that's the tape that keeps playing in the back of their head all the time. And so it's really important that we start to identify these belief systems that we have. But then the next step that I have my clients do is I say, okay, let's look at each one of these. And I want you to look at it and I want you to think, is this empowering or disempowering to me? And put an E by the ones that are empowering and a D by the ones that are disempowering. So now what we're doing is we're starting to identify which ones are serving me and which ones aren't. And then in the next step, what we can do is we can start to reframe and take the ones that are empowering and put those into our morning ritual that we recite these things over and over. And this is how we can start to form and shape our belief set, internally. Again, the more you can, we have these tapes that play around in our heads. But the one thing that's fascinating, and scientists have found this, psychologists and psychiatrists have actually done studies of the brain and found that we can rewire how our brain thinks, but it takes effort on our part to do this. So that's really the first area, is our belief system. The second one is what I call our values, which are the emotions that we seek and also the emotions that we avoid. But also associated with values are what are called rules. And these are the things that have to happen to trigger those emotions. So, again, what I have my clients go through, what my coach has me go through, is to really sit down and think, okay, what are the top, let's say, 3 emotions that I want to feel? And then conversely, take the ones that, what are the 3 emotions that I don't want to feel? But then once we have those defined, look at each one of those values and say, okay, what has to happen for me to feel that? So I'll give you an example. My top moving toward value is love. Okay. When I first was going through this process and my coach had me saying, okay, what's the rule? So what has to happen for you to feel love? I started to think, and I had to have, it was things like, okay, well, people have to tell me that they love me. They have to tell me that they appreciate me. They have to always be affirming me. I had all these rules that were associated, and the problem was not the emotion. I can't change that. If I'm wired to be attracted to love, I can't change that emotion. But the problem was my rules were making it very difficult for me to trigger that emotion. Conversely, my number one moving away value, the one I don't want to feel, and it's probably the number one for the large majority of people, is rejection.
True.
So with rejection, my rules at that time were, well, my wife says I have a headache. A prospect says, well, let me think about it. Again, they were very easy triggers to hit, and they weren't necessarily rejections, but I was associating with that. So the problem was I didn't want to feel rejection. So a lot of times I wouldn't take the steps, maybe in nurturing my relationship with my wife, maybe in taking a prospect and allowing them to mature through the process of becoming a client, all of these things, because I didn't want to trigger that emotion. So what I had to do, and I spent a lot of time doing this, is I had to start rewriting the rules. And the key to this is, with our moving towards values, the ones that we want to feel, we have to be in complete control of those, and we have to have those as simple as possible. So, for example, when I was talking about I wanted to feel love, what it really came down to was that as I started to eliminate these rules and find out what I can control, my rule for love is very simple. It's when I give to and serve others. Now that's something that's completely under my control, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's very simple. As long as I'm serving, I'll feel love. Conversely, I had to, for rejection, I had to make a lot of rules that were completely under my control that would make it hard to trip that wire. So for me to feel rejection, I have to accept a no as a final. I have to have a client spit in my face and tell me I never want to talk to you again. Okay. They have to ask for their file. They're going to talk badly about my mama. All right? Yeah. all of these different, but honestly, what am I doing? I'm stacking these rules to make it hard for me to trigger that emotion. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the more we can gain control of our emotions, all right, the more we're going to move in a positive direction, and we're going to do the things that trigger the positive emotions, and we're going to not do the things that trigger the negative emotions. And we're going to take steps that we would normally maybe not take even with negative emotions, because now that tripwire is so high. So for example, if I'm talking to a prospect and they say, well, you know what, let me think about it. Now it's like, hey, that's great. I'll tell you what, how about, is it okay if I put you on my newsletter list? Here, I'll send you my podcast, subscribe to my podcast. You'll get great information that's on there. And is it okay if I maybe touch base with you, just check in once a quarter, just to see how things are going, see if you've solved your problem?
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm taking action and avoiding not feeling that rejection.
And you're taking control.
Exactly. So the third area is our self-image. That's how we see ourselves. What do we see when we look in the mirror? And, it's really amazing to me. And I remember the first time I went through this exercise with my coach, and he had us we're sitting in a conference room. I was with my mastermind group, and he was kind of reformulating this whole mindset, this mindset project that he had put together. And he gave us all these little mirrors, and he said, all right, he goes, I want everybody, you got to be extremely honest with yourself. Everybody, we're going to sit here in silence, look in the mirror, and just start writing down what you see. And this was, for a lot of people, this is a big issue. So they look in the mirror and they think, I'm fat. I'm old looking. I'm, whatever negative connotation, what they're seeing in the mirror. And there's a lot of people that struggle with this. I had to laugh because I remember I looked in the mirror, I'm looking in this mirror and I'm staring at it. I finally got up and went to him and I said, hey, Joe, what if I don't see any problems? I said, I see a pretty good looking guy here. He said, you're just deflecting. So, and actually it's funny now, as I went through the process, I did find some things that really do hold me back. And so, but again, I want to redefine those things. So, what do we see when we look in the mirror? And then we write those things down. And then what is the new image? What do we want to see when we look in the mirror? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we've got to kind of redefine that. And again, it's especially important for all of these that we put these down on paper and we read them every day, because again, what that's going to do is rewire our brains. Yeah. So the fourth area is our internal dialogue. This is what we say when we talk to ourselves. And I remember this was one, I read a book years ago by a guy named Shad Helmstetter called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And this is really what it was about. And it was about this idea of we have these internal tapes that go on in our head. And the problem is most of the time they're disempowering. And they come a lot of times from things that happened to us when we were younger. Mm-hmm. In our childhood, maybe our parents, told us, you can't do this, or, I give you a personal story. I remember I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and my parents were just like, no, you can't do that. You need to learn how to read music. And so I never played guitar. But that rejection really stuck with me for the longest time. And it was something that it was not even in that area where they told me I wasn't capable, but it started to filter off even into my adult life, where in business, the first couple of years, I really struggled because this mental tape that I'm not capable was always playing in my head. Yeah. And so that internal tape was playing in my head, and I really had, once I identified it, I could then change that tape. Mm-hmm. And again, I rewrote new phrases to tell myself all the time that I am fully capable, that God created me to do great things, that I wouldn't be given a vision for my life if God didn't want me to accomplish something with this. And I tell myself these things every single morning to just, again, erase the old tapes and start programming the new stuff in. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing is that those tapes that we create when we're younger, that other people create for us when we're younger, they're extremely difficult to delete, right? They're extreme. I mean, the nice thing about tapes, you could rewind it and just hit record and it records right over the old stuff. But I find that it takes a while of re-recording, and then all of a sudden the old stuff's back again. Oh, let me re-record again. It takes practice, man. I mean, it takes a while.
And diligence.
Yes. Yeah.
And diligence. This is the exact reason why most people, set resolutions. Again, January is the month of change. We're going to make things different, but we revert back. There's a part of our brain that is, and I remember the analogy I heard. It's like a horse. When you're, if you had a horse that you always rode on one path, and at some point when you'll say, I'm going to take a different way, and you try to divert back. That horse is conditioned and will start to try to pull you back to the old trail because it's conditioned to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's how our brains work. So it takes constant practice to keep rewiring, keep pushing our brain onto these new pathways, and to eliminate those negative dialogue that we have going in our heads.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's basically, what are some of the things that, when we look at our internal dialogue, the questions to ask yourself are, what are some of the lies that we tell ourselves? Like in my case, I tell a lie that I'm not capable. When plenty of other people are capable, why wouldn't I? The only reason I wasn't was because I didn't think I was.
Yeah.
Okay. If I say I'm overwhelmed, well, aren't we all overwhelmed at some point in our lives? And sometimes isn't being overwhelmed part of progress? Okay. My family doesn't like me.
Oh man.
Whether it's our spouses or our children. Yeah. Especially, I mean, you have teenage children, anybody who's listening, do you think your kids love you all the time?
Yeah, seriously. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's tough. Wow.
Oh, it really is. It really is. I mean, here's the thing. So what do you say when you wake up in the morning? Do you say, man, I am excited about today? I'm excited about the things that are going to happen today. Or what's the one saying I used to hear? Do you say, good morning, Lord? Or good Lord, it's morning.
Can I be honest? That was I did the latter this morning.
Well,
it's Monday after a long holiday. Oh boy, here we go.
Well, but what's interesting? I got up and I'm like, man, I am ready to get started with the day because I spent the holiday finishing my business plan, got my goals set, and I'm really excited about some of the things that are going to be happening this year with the podcast. With I am doing a rebrand right now. Going to be working on focusing on the automotive repair industry, and I'm going to be on podcasts in that industry, writing articles for them because I'm basically the go-to person in financial services for that industry because I know that industry. So, again, but the difference is just the wiring. And what are we telling ourselves? What do we say when we get a yes? What do we say when we get a new client or customer? Are we like, hey, I deserve this? Or, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to do a good job for them? What when we get a no? We just talked about this. How do we describe ourselves? To ourselves. How do we define failure? That was a huge one for me. I mean, for the longest time, it was like, if I got a no, if a client left, these were all things that I would consider failure. I completely redefined that. My definition of failure is I only fail when I don't learn from something, when I don't learn from a situation.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is hugely empowering.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
and speaking for myself, Matt, I can tell you that I lost a client. I've lost a couple clients, but one client specifically that I lost in a very bad way. I made some mistakes. I did a couple things wrong, and it wasn't something that cost them money by any means or anything like that, but it was just the way I handled the situation wasn't done well, wasn't done properly, and that really stuck with me for quite some time. It was probably a good 8 to 12 months where I just kind of, I wouldn't say I pouted about it, but I was so frustrated with my own failure, quote unquote, that it took me a long time to actually examine the entire situation, realize the mistakes. I knew what the mistakes were, but realize those mistakes to learn from them instead of just saying, wow, I completely failed. And I was just hung up for a long time, just beating myself up about it. And guess what? That stuff happens. That stuff happens in our personal life, in our business life, between friendships. I mean, how many times do you make a mistake in a friendship and you just apologize, you just talk to them and talk things through, and it works out just fine. If we hang up on it and just say, man, what a failure, and just stay in that spot, there's no progress made. So I love the fact that you framed it that way. If I don't learn something from what I've done, positive or negative, then that's what the true failure is.
That's exactly right. And I think we need to be it's something we have to reinforce in our minds all the time. Because like you said, Eric, sometimes we do everything right and still we lose a client, we lose a friend. I mean, I had a situation, it was right before the holidays where I was working with this trainer. we were talking about COVID, and I'd mentioned some things, and all of a sudden, it's a private gym, but the one day he invited like a bunch of his buddies over, and it's not that big of a space, so there was about 8 guys in this gym, and I just mentioned, I wasn't real comfortable with that, and I'd like to know, if that's going to happen, I'd just rather reschedule. And the guy, like, all of a sudden, it was like a switch flipped, and he just started flipping out on me. And you're saying this, and I said, that's not what I'm saying. I said, I'm not being critical of you. I'm not telling you how to conduct your business. I just want to know, if you want to do this, let me know so that I can make appropriate, I can make the appropriate changes to make sure I feel safe, that make sure that, that I'm comfortable with being here. And he literally just wouldn't stop. And I finally I put my clothes on and I left and I walked out. Now, there was a time when I would just dwell on that and dwell on that and dwell on that. But, as I thought about it, I'm thinking, I didn't do anything wrong. We were just having a conversation, and all of a sudden, whatever happened, his switch went and the guy flipped. And we haven't talked since, and I can't control that.
Yep, absolutely. And that it reminds me of a quick story about a baby in a back seat. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but the baby in the back seat, you just don't know what somebody else is going through. There was a speaker told us a long time ago. He's a psychologist. It actually happened to him. He was at a red light, and the person in front of him, it turned green. A couple cars in front of that person went. The person in front of him wasn't moving. He was impatient. He's honking. He's got his arm out the window. Come on, move. What are you doing? And she looked frantic, but wasn't figuring out why. And he jumped out of his truck all upset and walked up there, and the light, had turned yellow and red by that point, and went up to her window and said, "What are you doing?" And she turned with tears in her eyes and says, "My baby's not breathing." And in the back seat, there was a small baby that was not breathing. Something had happened. It was choking. Right. And he learned his valuable lesson. The baby was fine. They got, paramedics came. They were actually able to dislodge whatever was choking the baby. But you don't know what somebody's baby in the back seat is, right?
Right.
You don't know what day that guy, your personal trainer, has had. You don't know what the possible struggles in his business are because of COVID. You don't know that he got in a huge fight with his wife earlier that morning about, maybe the same topic. Are you sure you want to do this? It might not be safe. No, I've got to do this. And then you just brought up some raw feelings. Right. You have no idea. But the thing is that you can only control what you can control. And that's been the theme of what you're talking about this entire podcast. You just don't know what somebody else is going through. So a little bit of grace and self-reflection of, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. I was just stating my opinion, my own concerns, which you were completely valid in doing. And it's on him. And maybe he'll grow from the situation. Maybe he'll reflect, hopefully, about how that went down and make some changes and reach out. Who knows? But bottom line is, like you've said this entire podcast, it's all about what you control.
Oh, yeah. It's so much so. And like you said, again, you can't control the other person. And if, hopefully they reflect on it and maybe come back and say, hey, listen, I was out of line. I'm sorry. Yeah. But if they don't, that's okay. I mean, it's not a reflection on us. And again, but we have to get our minds thinking in that way that, and it's, I think of the story of Jesus. More people left him than actually walked with him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. When, in John 6, when he gives the bread of life course, they couldn't understand what he was saying, and most of them left. But there were a few that said, when he asked, he said, are you going to leave? They said, where else are we going to go? And again, I think that comes down to, again, our own mindset. So, I think it's really important that we do an evaluation to determine where our current thinking is and why we do the things that we do. And if we can learn how to change our mindset, we can change our lives and determine the things we need to do to fulfill what I call the new you. So, again, this is very much a top view of, of this topic. I mean, I could go on for hours about it. It's something I talk to my clients all the time about because, like I said, it's easy. We can start to define a vision. We can create a plan. But when the client isn't executing the plan, then we have to get into, okay, so why is that? And 99 times out of 100, it's because of their mindset. And so I've really got to kind of work on them. I always tell people I'm probably a lot of ways more psychologist than I am financial guy, because like I said, the financial part is just putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So, but if you don't like doing that, you shouldn't be in this business. And I just love helping people and trying to help them achieve the things that they want to achieve in life.
Yeah, Matt, this is fantastic. I love this topic. I love the overview that you gave. And with this information, Matt, I know that we said it earlier, if people had questions, they could email in and ask you. Now, I've heard that you've made a special email just for the podcast, correct?
Yes, I did. Just for the listeners. So if you have any specific questions regarding this or any of the other podcasts, just go to podcast@DiFranFC.com. So that's DIFRAN, F as in Franco, C as in Charlie.com. So podcast@DiFranFC.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Perfect. All right. And then if anybody's listening and they want to just actually reach out to you to have a conversation in person about maybe other things they've heard on the podcast or today's content, how do they reach you specifically?
The easiest way, go to the website at DiFranVFO.com. You can schedule at the top right-hand corner, there's a button. You can just schedule a exploratory call. I do this free of charge, so I'd be more than happy to talk about your situation, and see if there's any way that we can help. And as I tell people all the time, even after the evaluation, if I can't, I promise you that I will get you pointed in the right direction. So that's the value that I want to bring to you.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for your time today. Happy New Year, man. I just love speaking with you.
Happy New Year to you. It's a blessing to have you in my life, Eric.
And the last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. It is a blessing for us to have you on this show every 2 weeks. I hope you get a lot out of it. I know that Matt is putting a ton into it, a ton of great information. So again, thank you so much for joining us at Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Matt comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or another qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge, LLC, doing business as DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state securities authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.